Hello and welcome to our very first Talking Politics USA question and answer session. And with me, who better than Robert Moore, our veteran correspondent from the US, and Laura Schwartz, formerly a key staffer in the White House. Thank you very much for joining us, both of you. These are eventful times in which we live. Are they not? I don't know how you both find it. I find everywhere I go at the moment, people have questions, like many questions, like what's happening, what does it mean, what's it like being in the news business? I mean, if it's like that for me over here, I can only imagine that every time any of you go anywhere, it's just like, oh my God, what's happening next? Do you both find that?
Yes, I find that people are curious. They're concerned. I always like to, as I say, talk politics without being too political, seek to give perspective, not persuasion. But some days it's pretty hard because I don't always have the answers.
Robert, you've lived through so many big things in your life. As we've talked before, I remember when I joined this company, you were out there in Moscow covering the collapse of the Soviet Union. And here we are in what I have to say, and I know we've talked about this before, but they do feel like quite epoch-making times where the big tectonic plates are shifting again. Do you feel that, or do you think that's exaggerated?
I absolutely feel a little bit of sense of symmetry in my career in a way, because you're right. I began it in Moscow, reporting on the fall of the USSR and a sense of sort of profound geopolitical change. And here I am, 2025, been in Washington a long time. And once again, these same debates are taking place about whether something so fundamental is shifting that the world order will never again be the same. Is this the end of American preeminence on the international stage as America's sort of, as Trump's sort of America First agenda takes hold? China's rise, the Ukraine war, conflict in the Middle East. You once again feel we are living in extraordinary times that may change the very direction of the 21st century. So yes, I mean, we do feel this, and we feel it, just in our everyday conversations here in America as people debate, whether we're on the edge of the abyss or whether actually Trump is playing this kind of 3D game of chess and he's a brilliant entrepreneur and president after all. All of these sort of questions and debates are sort of ricocheting around us. And it's a thrilling time to be a journalist. Obviously, if you love liberal America, as many people in Europe do, then it's also deeply concerning.
Well, listen, people do have a lot of questions, so let's crack straight into them. Maybe we can alternate. Laura, I put this one to you first. Ian McDonald on X, formerly known as Twitter, wants to know, how can average Americans relate to a multi-millionaire president? I think one of the serious points behind this from a British point of view, I would say, is that I think British people, like Rishi Sunak was a millionaire prime minister, and it really hurt him politically, I think. It doesn't seem to hurt President Trump in the slightest that he's perceived as this very rich man. Is that a curiously American thing, do you think, Laura?
I think it's a curiously American thing, given that he came from reality television. I don't think everyone really relates to Donald Trump in that scheme of wealth, but they aspire to be Donald Trump as to what he, put forth on The Apprentice for so many seasons, that he can be a kingmaker of people and companies. And he himself is this big man of wealth. And it's just like with the Kardashians reality show. Everyone, they see that they want to be like that. So they're going to keep tuning in. They're going to support them. They're going to buy their products. I think it's very similar with Donald Trump, but I wouldn't say the many mega followers that I know and that I'm related to don't relate to Donald Trump, but they aspire to be his class of wealth and influence of Donald Trump.
Okay, our next question. Emily emails, what are your thoughts, Robert, this one's to you, on the Trump administration resharing AI-generated content? Is it creative strategy to get people talking or completely unethical? I mean, you think of that infamous Gaza video as one amongst others. I think that's a very interesting and apposite question, Robert.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, it can be both, of course, can't it? It can be both unethical and part of their sort of marketing's sort of strategy and branding. I mean, I just don't think that there are those sort of standards in the White House in this administration. I mean, nobody's thinking through, look, is this an ethical strategy. There are so many sort of loyalists and sycophants around Donald Trump that things are just being tweeted out there. It's kind of volume, not quality for this White House. I mean, the amount of stuff being posted on X is so kind of it's equivalent to a tsunami, and I just don't think anybody's giving it any analysis. They're just pumping it out there. They want to occupy the space. They want to dominate the sort of social media ecosystem, and I think it's just about a kind of a lack of ethics and lack of judgment, but also just no one's got time to think about it. The strategy is to pump it out, and above all else, to dominate the conversation. That is, I think, the sort of the preeminent desire from the White House, is to take all the oxygen from the room.
Laura, can I just ask you a quick follow-up on that? Do you think it works? Yeah. Or do you think there's a danger that people just get sick of it and actually they get tired of the White House quicker than they might, and its current incumbents quicker than they might do otherwise?
Well, because there's no great regulation on it, unless you self-regulate it, you're going to believe it. And I think there's a lot of people out there that do. And Emily raises such a good point. And I really think when it comes down to it, we have to take on personal responsibility to fact check our own videos that we watch and maybe take a closer look. But to be honest, there's a lot of folks out there that don't, and so they just go forward with it, and it doesn't stop the White House from producing them. So I think this is an era of self-regulation and responsibility when it comes to that.
Our next question is from someone who might be familiar to both of you from their days, from your days on the award-winning Will Trump Win podcast. Here it is.
Hey, Laura, Robert and Tom. Will Trump win was the question we asked in 2020. Now we may be asking whether he'll run for a third term. But the question I wanted to ask you today is, with Cory Booker making that mammoth speech on the Senate floor, with AOC and Bernie Sanders travelling around the country, and with Gavin Newsom launching his podcast, which Democratic candidates, Democratic politicians are really standing out for you as we look forward to 2028?
Well, there we are. Top question from great correspondent and all-round nice guy, Fred Dimbleby. Well known to you both. Laura, you first on that, but I'd love to hear from both of you.
What a brilliant question from the amazing Fred. I have to say, last go round, with Obama's first go round, I should say, he wasn't really in the picture this early on. And that's why I think we could be really stunned by someone way outside the fray. In fact, a guy I've been watching and encourage everybody to look up is this guy named Stephen A. Smith. He's a journalist on ESPN, our big sports network, a lot with the National Basketball Association. He's written a couple of books called Straight Shooter. He seems to be wading his way into politics. He's got a pretty good mass appeal. And he just started popping up on some news shows talking about politics. And there's a little bit of a nudge to have him run. I think, given Donald Trump and his success coming from outside the political mainstream, somebody like that could maybe have an effect. I'm looking outside the normal politics for this next one.
Yeah, I think Laura, you're super smart to do that. I mean, Fred, excellent question. How dare you find a question that that sort of baffles both me and Laura, but it actually talks to the sort of, I think, what is the deficit in the Democratic Party is, look, there's lots of candidates out there, Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, Tim Walz is making moves back in Minnesota. So, I mean, lots of people, AOC and so on. So lots of people are out there. But, what we've got now is kind of two lanes. Do you confront the Trump administration or do you try and do business with the Trump administration? And I think Democrats have got to decide, which lane they want to be in. And I don't think any of the candidates emerging so far really sort of could take on the sort of MAGA agenda at this point. So I think it's a big question. I think Laura's super smart to look outside of the mainstream and outside of conventional political candidates. This is an era when, something extraordinary has to happen if the Democrats are going to win the argument. So I think we should look way outside of traditional lanes in terms of who might emerge.
Laura, I want to put this question to you. Philip writes on email, is there any likelihood that gun laws will ever be changed? Or will the US continue to live in the era and mentality, as he puts it, of the Wild West?
Philip, that is an incredible question, and it shouldn't be hard to answer. It should be a resounding yes. We had a ban on automatic weapons during the Clinton administration. It was successful. It wasn't renewed by the Bush administration and hasn't come back since. There was just a law passed last week in the United States, in Colorado, banning semi-automatic weapons from sale unless they're licensed and you're trained on them. It doesn't seem to be catching fire in any of the other states. And with the Republicans in office, not just at the White House with the Trump administration, but also in the House and the Senate, right now, it just unfortunately politically is not to their benefit, and I don't think they're going to move on it. It's unfortunate, and with every shooting, it's about sending your thoughts and prayers. Well, I'd like them to send some action, and do something to cut down on the availability of weapons in our country. It's a travesty, and I'm sorry I don't have a happier answer.
Robert, Nick in Buckingham asks on email, is there any mechanism for removing Trump as president short of impeachment? From memory, it's he has to be deemed unfit by his entire cabinet, doesn't he? Is there anything else?
I mean, no, other than, the cabinet deciding that, he's unfit for office or, an assassin's bullet. So, and that nearly caught up with him, obviously, in Butler, Pennsylvania. So, no, he is, we have to kind of reconcile ourselves to the fact that, because he controls Congress and because, the Republicans are in the White House, he's not just president, he's in an incredibly strong position, at least until the midterms, when the conversation then moves on to 2028. So, no, I'm afraid to those who would like him removed, that is, vastly implausible. And that's why Democrats are now trying to focus on how best to contest his agenda, not on how best to try and remove him.
Robert, quick follow-up. Why does Steve Bannon, his sometime acolyte, friend, whatever you want to call Steve Bannon, keep floating that Trump could run for a third term when there's no constitutional ability for him to do so? Is it something we should take? I mean, what do you, is that just Steve Bannon causing trouble? Is there serious intent behind it? He keeps saying people are looking at it. I mean, what does that mean? Maybe both of you, Robert, you first, but should we be paying attention to that, or is it just causing trouble?
I think it's Steve Bannon just mischief making. But, there is a way he runs for a third term, but it involves obviously changing the Constitution. So, an extraordinarily long reach. No, I think it's Steve Bannon and the MAGA sort of faithful simply kind of provoking the left, trolling them, trying to, again, as we've spoken, on last week's podcast, talks about trying to dominate the conversation, that being their main agenda. So I wouldn't take it seriously. I don't think there's any chance of it happening whatsoever. But, it is, again, MAGA loyalists just playing with the American psyche.
Laura, do you take it seriously, or
Yep.
do you wholeheartedly agree with Robert?
Once again, Robert is correct. This is about the mega loyalists flooding the zone. Look over here while we try to do something over here. Although I agree, he can't run for president again. I think he can certainly be a shadow president. I think he can campaign with whoever's next, whether that be J.D. Vance or another mega loyalist. And he will be the puppet master. But there's just too many hoops to go through in order to officially run. But I also think that Steve Bannon, he's a lot of talk, but I think they'll try to flood the zone with as many lawsuits as they can to try to allow it to happen.
Laura, this one's for you as a long-term Democrat. Molly asks on email, I've heard a lot of rumors online about Michelle and Barack Obama getting a divorce. Goodness knows there are many rumors about just about every famous married couple in the world, but is there any truth to the speculation?
Well, I live in Chicago, where Barack and Michelle still have a home. They're building the presidential library, finally, here in Chicago. I have to say, with no firsthand knowledge, but second or third hand, no. Michelle has been doing her own thing. She's always had her own vision. After the White House, she really felt like she could do her own thing. She doesn't have to show up if she doesn't want to show up. There's no surprise that she has great disdain for Donald Trump. She wasn't at the inauguration. These things spark divorce rumors. I think that's jumping a little too far.
Robert, final question to you. Jason Turner on Facebook wants to know, what trade deficits did the Penguins have that justified the counter tariffs placed on them?
That's an excellent question, isn't it? I mean, the thing about the Heard and McDonald Islands is we all loved that story principally because we wondered if we might be the first reporters ever to be assigned there and to get there. And for those of us who haven't been to Antarctic islands, we were always hoping that would be the case. And of course, that's why we all were delighted that Greenland became center stage in the story, because we all wanted to travel to Nuuk to report from there. So it's really, I think those penguins, we all were waiting for a whole group of reporters to arrive and discover that there are no humans on those islands. Yeah, I mean, another kind of bizarre insight, isn't it, into the world of how Trump makes policy and how he navigates tariffs. I mean, just an absurdity that actually served a purpose of highlighting how ill thought out his tariff and his trade policies are.
One of the things I love about the job that Robert and I do or have done over the years is that you spend a time going to all kinds of weird places for all kinds of weird reasons. And sometimes many years later, when someone asks you if you've been somewhere, you can't actually quite remember. Did I go? I think so. Maybe for a day, went to some summit, went to some underground bunker. Can't really remember anything about it.
Tom, what is your country count as a reporter? How many have you been to?
I don't know. I can't. I honestly couldn't tell you. What I often find is someone says, "Oh, have you been to Lisbon?" I'm thinking, well, the thing when you go to a summit. I once flew to a G7, I think, or G8 summit on Hokkaido in Japan. We literally flew all the way there. It was with Gordon Brown, who famously didn't allow any time for sleep. So we didn't sleep on the way there. Then the kind of time difference was appalling. So we said, no one's going to cry for me at this stage. But we worked all day and then worked all night. And then you're in an underground media bunker. You're nowhere near the action. It's probably about 2 hours kind of through mega security to where anything's really happening. And so you don't really see anything except an underground media bunker. And then you fly home, sleep deprived, and probably get incredibly drunk and do something stupid on the, end up falling down on the plane home or whatever. So there's a lot, don't you think? I'm going to ask Laura what the most exotic place she's ever been for work or others. But Robert, do you agree? Like sometimes you just can't remember whether you actually went somewhere. And really what it's about is you didn't meaningfully see anything of the place you went.
Well, not only that, but it begs the question, what is it to visit a country? If you've just been into an airport and done some filming, nearby, does that count? And I think the answer probably is not. It's no insight into a country. There's always this danger of sort of parachute journalism. Not to say that I wasn't keen for our foreign editor to send me to the Heard and McDonald Islands or indeed to Greenland. But you're right. I mean, we see countries sometimes in a strange and in a strange way that doesn't lead to profound reporting. But Laura, where have you been that you kind of had some insight, but wish you could have spent longer in?
Similar to what you both just alluded to. I mean, traveling on Air Force One was amazing for those 8 years with President Clinton. But, there were some times where the only time you breathed like fresh air was in the tarmac, because you get out of the plane, into the motorcade, arrive underground, go into a hotel, be there for the meetings, do whatever events, go back down to the basement, get in the motorcade, drive back to the tarmac, get out of the plane. So as everybody, I mean, I've been to amazing places all around the world, whether they were, war-torn areas like Bosnia or, palaces like we see throughout Europe. It really gets down to you are there performing a duty and a job. And so that's your number one. But anytime you could, sneak out and take a walk or just smell a couple of flowers around Buckingham Palace or being inside for that changing of the guard, if I can say, love my time in the UK. Those are the moments.
Okay, I think we should end this podcast and this Q&A by doing best trip, worst trip, working trips I'm talking about, not personal trips here. Let me go first. Worst trip, got shot in Jakarta, so that's an obvious, well-known one. Best trip, I think, the Queen's Golden Jubilee tour of Australia. Because the Queen, so far as we could all tell, was a very nice person. She tended to attract very nice people to work for her. So it was a very long trip. It was a Jamaica, New Zealand, Australia. And I'm sure the palace won't thank me, but it was the closest I've come to a holiday at work. I think we spent like 2 weeks in Australia or 10 days. It was, it was a little, she'd done a lot of traveling. So it was a couple of events and then the beach. I probably shouldn't admit this, but that was a great trip. Robert, you next, and then we'll give the last word to Laura. Best trip, worst trip, Robert.
Best trip when the poor old dolphins in the Mediterranean had a virus and there were some mysterious deaths. And my foreign editor rang me up and said, "Look, Robert, would you mind chartering a vessel and touring the Greek islands looking for any dolphin carcasses? And no need to report back, but just have 3 weeks of observing dolphins and seeing what's happening." That was a good trip. The worst trip, as so often, is to somewhere that suffers and sort of Eastern Congo after the Rwanda genocide and the sense of death and destruction and human suffering and unable to do anything to help people was something that stays with me.
Laura, final word to you. Best and worst.
I'd say they were the same. Just taking off of what Robert just said, it reminds me when we went to Bosnia, Sarajevo at the end of the war. It was the worst trip because we saw what just unfolded before all of our eyes for years. But the best part of the trip was the resilience of the human spirit. And so that holds a very special place in my heart.
I've just got to ask you one final question because I was tempted to earlier and I didn't. I've never been, obviously, on Air Force One. What's it like?
It is amazing. It's a ton of fun because it's that moment where even when you go back to the press area and say hello to the press, you're with all of your colleagues. And if you take a second to look around, pinch yourself, call your parents from the plane, you're not doing it justice because it truly is magnificent. And we could do a whole episode on what Air Force One, the movie, got right and what it got wrong. But it's an extraordinary aircraft run by incredible officers from the military. And one of the things we got in trouble for was trying to get onto trays, and on takeoff is tray surfing down the aisles.
Yes, I feel
Did
like
it
that's
once, but never again.
I feel like that's a staple of all these political flights. I think we should do a whole podcast on political flights and how everyone gets. I remember a long flight back from Chile with Gordon Brown and his staff, which off-duty BA staff. I was knackered, so trying to sleep on the floor, and it was like a sort of all-night karaoke party. But maybe we'll save that for another podcast. That is all we've got time for on this special Q&A. Thank you for watching and listening, and do keep sending your questions in to talkingpolitics@itv.com. Talking Politics USA will be back next week. See you then.